Legal Tech, Monday Legal, take one.
I'm not ready.
Take two.
Legal tech, AI for lawyers, knowledge management, innovation solutions. We have so much of new terms that's coming to our work as lawyers. We had enough. We don't have time for this. We can't follow. We are overwhelmed. There's so many events, so many conferences, new people in the market who are talking that they have been working as lawyers for many, many years and they love innovation and technology, and now they're coming up with a new solution. What is the meaning of legal tech? Can someone please explain it to us in an easy way? For that reason, we thought, let's bring an expert in the room. Our guest for today is Sophie Best, the owner and CEO of Knowledge Nexus. Good morning, Sophie, and thank you very much for coming with us.
Morning. I'm very grateful to be here.
Thank you so much. Can you please unlock this expression or these expressions? We have so many, but let's start with legal tech. What does it mean, and when did this expressions came to light?
So it's an interesting one, actually. If I had to put it into, say, a couple of words, I would say innovate, adapt, and embed. And the reason for that is that I actually think the word legal tech kind of needs to go. I think it kind of doesn't really do us any favors these days. So I think years ago, and I started out 20 years ago almost now, and legal tech wasn't even a word. It was just technology for lawyers, automation, there was not really a word. And actually over time, it's evolved. And the word now kind of, I think, scares people. I actually think that's why we need to kind of move away. And actually what we do as lawyers is we focus too much on the technology, which is why it's failing us. And actually, I always say to people, we need to move away from the technology and we need to go back to people and processes, because the best legal tech and the legal tech that's going to help kind of empower us to be better lawyers, to give us more information, to make better informed decisions, to give better advice, that needs people. The technology isn't going to be, some rocket that's going to launch us into space. It's meant to guide us along the way. And I think that message has got lost because everyone is telling us about this technology that's revolutionary and it's going to change your life. And, sorry, legal tech providers, because I know you all kind of vouch for that. But actually, I think sometimes we're forgetting about the people. And for me, that's something that I've kind of always been passionate about. I always feel like, there's always going to be a need for the people, i.e. the lawyers in the room. And I get asked so much, every panel I speak on, every room I walk in, is it going to take our jobs? Are we going to have a job? What's the meaning of being a lawyer now? And actually what I think is that it's coming, we can't stop it. And we have to just embrace it. We have to kind of adapt. And actually, we have to start looking at the positives. We have to stop being scared because, people didn't go to law school to sit in a dark room and, do grunt work as such. And actually, that's what I think the positive of technology is. It's going to kind of transform the way that lawyers work. And I think given the kind of other crisis that we have on the whole kind of mental health, kind of burnout, that thing, I actually think legal tech is going to be a benefit for that. I think it's going to change the way that we work. And
yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, I don't know if you remember the other day when we were at the panel of BIA and we were talking, and I mentioned this example of moving away from the typewriter to the electronic typewriter, and was a kind of a step. And that was a hardware technology that used at that time to develop the work of the lawyers. And I understand very well that the technology in general, not necessarily legal tech, is really helping all of us. So I guess WhatsApp can be called a technology that helped lawyers a lot. It's not designed per se for lawyers, but we use it. Legal tech, as I understand it, as the expression can be translated or interpreted in a way, is the technology or the software that is designed specifically for lawyers. And I see it as always like, case management services, research, softwares that help in document management and things like that. What do you see how do you see this technology, let's say, or the legal tech or these innovation solutions helped our work as lawyers, for example? I mean, you practiced for a while.
It's an interesting one, actually. And funny enough, I'm actually not a lawyer by trade, but because I've worked with lawyers for so long, I almost have kind of ended up in that field. And the one thing that I really do a lot of is working with lawyers on the process. And if we look back over the last 20 years, technology has already transformed. I mean, if you said yourself, fax, typewriters, floppy disks. One of my friends who's a lawyer, she was saying to me about one of her children, and she was trying to explain to them what a floppy disk is, and they're like, "Mum, what is that?" And we're kind of this aha moment of we feel old. So we've already seen that, right? We've already seen the evolution, which is why, again, I think we don't need to be scared of it. It's happened. It just happened over time, and now we're seeing it sped up. So in the world of law, like when I've been working kind of as a legal consultant, I've seen it in every single practice. Like if we look at M&A, that's probably one of the early adopters. So traditionally, companies would have an M&A deal. You'd have, a company looking to divest or fundraise or list on the stock exchange. And they would then need to kind of, create a due diligence process.
Right.
And they would need to speak to other lawyers. They would have finance. And that was done in what we call physical data rooms. So, the lawyers would have to compile boxes of documents.
Yes.
And I remember back in my career in London working, with a firm, say Linklaters, for example, and they would get a new deal and the lawyers would all scurry around to get all of this content, which, by the way, is everywhere, all over the world. You're trying to wait for people to get it. And an M&A deal is like, it needs to be quick.
Yeah.
So we saw that evolve. We saw people move away from sitting with a box of documents, trying to figure out how do we arrange it so that an investor comes in and they can, do what they need to do as a lawyer. And then that got changed to data rooms. So that was like what my first idea of legal tech. And that was something that I'd done for many years. And I got to see the transformation. I actually worked for a large data company called Merrill DataSite. And when I was working with them, I actually used to be involved in a lot of the product when they were actually evolving to be kind of the next iteration. And I would sit with the lawyers and work out, okay, well, what do we need? Like, how can we get you from this process of manual? What do we need it to look like on the tech side? And actually that transformed things because an M&A deal can now be done in a matter of months. Maybe not. we all want it to be done in a matter of months, but
we don't want it to be in a matter of months.
Legal tech's not magic, right? It's not a magic button. It's not a rocket to the moon, but it has sped it up because the lawyers can now be on a flight. They could be traveling all around the world and they can access this. So, we have everything at our fingertips now.
Yeah.
So for that's been, that's transformed the way that companies transact. And that's meant that there's less money spent on these deals. There's less risk. There's, these deals can be wrapped up quicker. And also, with that, they can take on a more global aspect because you don't have to think about, okay, what if I have an investor in the US, an investor in China, in Australia, London, and wherever else. That's so easy to do now. So like that was one industry. And then, and again, that's not necessarily AI, but it is technology. And this is the other thing I think we need to do. We're so transfixed on this generative AI thing.
Yeah.
And yes, okay, that is game changing. But we actually forget about all of the other legal tech that could help us. We don't need to look at these great big can do everything. We can make small changes that can actually help us. And then, if you look at other areas, litigation, so tech-assisted review has been around for, probably 15 plus years.
Yeah.
And so, litigation lawyers are well versed to the fact that they need technology to mine data. You cannot go through terabytes of data. There's a second request project or a litigation. You need technology and you need to fine-tune so that you can find and make your case. That's been around. So again, that's been transformative for the legal industry. It started with e-discovery. We've seen tools like relativity, but now because of the AI advancements, all of the old tools that were good, now we look at them and I'm like, they're not so good anymore because yes, they're still better, but AI is kind of meaning that these technologies can just become, 100 times better than we even saw then.
So this is the point, is that the lawyers and the law firms are so overwhelmed. There's so many legal tech solutions. There's so many solutions, as you said, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, and they're well established and they are here in the market for a while, and they've been helping a lot of lawyers. And now every other day there's a new company or a new offering. Where can we go, and what, I don't know, where do we start? For example, if I want to make use of that.
Yeah. It's one I think that many teams struggle with because, and I think again, we see all these kind of snazzy adverts and marketing. And like I said, we're transformative, revolutionary, and we're going to cut your, day in by 40%. We're going to, and actually I think that kind of marketing doesn't really hit home with lawyers anymore because it's not just about time. It's about risk. It's about efficiency,
accuracy, confidentiality, data protection. There's so many other aspects.
And all of this now is so important, especially in the Gulf. I mean, if you think of data protection regulations, like we're seeing everything change, right?
Yeah.
Whereas years ago, it's not that we didn't have to worry about it, but it's just become more prevalent and regulated. And that's a good thing, by the way.
Yeah.
But actually, I think what we focus on are these great big, how can we bring in AI to transform everything? Actually, what most legal teams need to do is to take a step back. So I do, one of the other hats that I wear is on the consulting side. So I work a lot with a company called Jameson Legal. So they're more known as a recruitment, legal recruitment company. And they formed a company called Jameson Legal Tech. And they come over to Dubai quite a lot. They're actually over here next week. We're in Riyadh and then they're back in Dubai. And one of the things that they came to me about a year and a half ago and said was, we work with so many lawyers, we place lawyers, and they come to us because they're like, how do we, we just don't know what to do. We're so overwhelmed, like you said. And actually that's when they said to me, could you come in and kind of help us? So, one of the reasons that I consult with them is to kind of give them something that they can give back to their clients. And with that, I've worked with many clients where I say, they say to me, okay, we want to bring AI in. We need to buy AI. And I'm like, okay, so what do you want? That I don't know. We just need to be better. We need to be more efficient. And I, yes, that's good. But I always say to them, okay, let's completely unpack. Let's not just go and look at 100 demos. What do you want to change? And again, this is where we bring it back, people and process. Because if we take it back to what do you want the outcome to be? What kind of process, what does the process look like? And I think we have to, and by doing that, we need to talk to people. We need to interview the legal team. We need to ask people, well, how are you doing this right now? Like, how do you engage with your clients? How do you contract? What's the day-to-day life that you see? Are you dealing with third-party contracting? Because everyone's trying to sell you these days contract automation. Create no NDA hassle, automate your templates. Great. That's so needed. But most companies nowadays, they're not creating their own templates. As a lawyer, you actually spend more time reviewing third-party contracts. So actually automating your templates only helps you a certain amount. What you really need is contract analysis. You need a tool that can help leverage data. So I would say to that lawyer, okay, so actually what's a blocker for you is, and I had this conversation with a GC last week in Qatar, and he was like, I reviewed 15,800 contracts within our legal team last year, manually. And they're a federal company. They're having to make sure that they're dealing with, that their suppliers, don't have connections with XYZ. And that's a big risk, right? If
they need an army of lawyers and a massive amount of time.
And it's not even money, right? It's time, it's risk.
Yeah.
So actually, that's where AI can come in. And again, that's where we need to get into the actual use case of what would help you is to have something that can leverage what you do as a company. What is your positioning? What is your fallback? What clauses do you what is your kind of hard stance? We can't move from this. Because actually, if you've been contracting for years and you've got that database, we can leverage that knowledge. That's where AI becomes useful. We don't want it to make the decision for you because it's not a lawyer and you can't sue AI. So what are you going to do if it goes wrong? But what you can do is to use it to get the data. So for me, if I'm a GC and I can within 10 minutes say, okay, this new contract has come in, I've been asked by the business to review it. they've already told me it's urgent and they've rung me 5 times, even though they only sent it to me an hour ago, asking me why have I not done it. I now don't have to go and look at 5,000 contracts trying to figure out, where does this fit with our positioning? I can use AI and I can have a redlined contract in Word, because we all know lawyers love Word and that's just what we're using daily.
Yeah.
I have a redlined contract and it's, instead of me manually track changes in Word, I've now got this, this negotiation, and I can then go back to my business or a client. And yes, I still need to check it and I need to, kind of what I call do the lawyering. I always say, let the AI find the data and then you do the lawyering. But that GC or head of legal or associate, whoever it is, now is in a position that they weren't in before, right? That could have taken them weeks, like maybe even longer. And so they're now in a position where they can transact better. So again, we're kind of taking it away from that whole big legal tech discussion to what can we actually use to do what we need to do. And when you start talking to lawyers about that, they get excited. They're like, okay, well, I get it. I'm not scared now. Like that would, transform my legal practice. That GC who was reviewing 15,000 contracts, he now in his head is thinking, okay, well, if I can get this piece of technology that fits our processes, it's not just a one size fits all, my legal team is going to be freed up to do more proactive things. We're not just putting out fires or sitting reviewing contracts, answering to the business. We can actually do what we need to do. And that for me is, again, what legal tech is. It's allowing us to do our jobs. It's allowing us to be better lawyers. It's allowing us to have, the information at our fingertips to advise better.
Yeah.
And if I had to put it in one word, data. Think of AI as data. Don't think of it as something that's going to come and take away your legal mind, because that's the most important piece.
So basically what I understand now is people need to put in their minds that there is no legal tech solution that fits every law firm. There's no legal tech solution that fits every GC. There is no legal ops or AI tool that helps everybody. You need to have the understanding of what is missing or what are you doing and what takes time from you and what you like to optimize in the process, and then to understand which solution fits you the most. Otherwise, you're going to be subscribing to these legal tech solutions or AI solutions or whatever legal AI, new software, innovative thing that doesn't fit you.
Yeah. And that's it. And I'm sorry to all you legal tech providers out there, because I'm not saying you're not brilliant and that you're not, doing great things. But again, we need to make sure that we get something that fits our needs. And that doesn't mean that, like I said, there are brilliant technologies out there. I've been fortunate enough to work with many of them because of my career. But again, I think for the legal tech vendors themselves, the more they understand how lawyers work and what they need, they're in a better position to partner with these firms. Because what you also don't want to do as a tech company is work with companies and have a turnover rate. You want to be a trusted partner. You want to work with these firms and create stickiness, because ultimately, if you're helping transform their work, they're going to stay put, right? No one's going to spend months implementing something to the next year just be like, oh, okay, well, let's run a tender review process just to save a few bucks. Yeah. It's not about that. And then you can look at exact processes. And the other thing that often you can do with legal tech is you can solve individual challenges, right? So you might solve contract review. That's a big piece of the pie for you. But then you might say, okay, well, actually, the great thing then is what comes next. The next part is the actual kind of post-signature. So that's where we start to look at, okay, well, as a lawyer and a company, what are our contractual obligations? Because we've gone through the hassle of negotiation, we've gone through the signing hassle, and now we need to make sure that we uphold these contracts, because there are huge business ramifications, right? There's risk of, litigation, there's risk of, monetary risk. I mean, years ago, I remember speaking to clients that would lose millions of dollars because they didn't know that contracts were auto-renewing. So a big company has an office in New York, London, Dubai, and they go and sign a new lease and they didn't cancel the old one. because they have hundreds of them. Technology can solve that. That's quite simple. A company can look at having a CLM, a contract lifecycle management tool, where they can actually have a contract database, a repository. Again, it's quite simple. And then the GC never really has to worry about having oversight. They can come in and say, okay, well, once a month, like what's coming up, what's expiring, what contracts have a change of control that's coming into place. Again, this is all data that lawyers need to know. So the lawyer, one thing I always hone back on is the lawyer is still needed. The lawyer still comes in and does the decision-making process, analyzes the risk. But what the lawyer shouldn't have to do is kind of remember when this happens, or manually scramble thinking, oh no, that contract, I need to look through my email and I've got to email this person and they're busy because they're flying and, oh, that person's left.
Right.
What do we do now? And this is where I think technology is so important, because you have stability, you have information no matter what, where, and you have it at your fingertips. And I was at a conference recently and someone said, actually, knowledge is not power anymore. Unfortunately, it's just a matter of fact, because it's at our fingertips. But that's actually really powerful, because the more knowledge we have, the more we can do. And that's going to kind of change everything from lawyering to any other industry. And actually, that's really exciting.
So what are the starters kit? What are the examples of the software, AI tools, and legal tech solutions that are available in the market and the lawyers and GCs can use and benefit?
So that's the good thing, right? Okay, yes, there are a lot, which provides the problem of, being overwhelmed. But the positive is that there's so much out there. And there's so much out there for everyone. Every firm is different. And I always like to think, start simple. Don't start with AI, which is, something that people are still getting their heads around. I've been doing it for 20 years and I'm still learning. But actually, I'd say, let's take it to the basics, right? Like when you're a child, you learn how to ride a bike, you have your stabilizers on. You don't just get on a mountain bike and, go for it. You'd break your legs probably.
Yes.
And legal tech's no different. So, we need to look at the basics of where do we start? And actually for most of us, the start is things like intake. How do we work with our clients? How do we, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? You look at your email, right?
Yeah.
And then you and you maybe have a manual thing of, and I need to put that onto a system. So if we look at law firms first, law firms can take away all of that with practice management systems. So, they can use systems like Clio and various other things, iManage. There are lots of tools out there that transform the way that they engage with those starting points of, clients and staff effectively. So again, time management, they're not manually kind of, having to manage all of that. So practice management systems for law firms are brilliant, because it just takes away the admin side. So we see firms like that. And then you've got you've got Elite, 3E, and I think one of them got bought out. So I'm probably out of date on that. But there are so many, things that we can look at. Now, again, it's all about saving time, freeing up the lawyer to do, what they were trained to do. Then if we switch it to the general counsel, that's different, because, again, legal tech, this is where we also need to be careful. A law firm works very different to a GC, right?
Yes.
I mean, we were at the BIA conference that you were doing a panel on. A law firm is a different model. Yes, we all work together and, they're all lawyers, but it's completely different.
Yeah, our work is not the same. We interact every day together, but what they need is not the same as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for legal tech, what works for a law firm might not work for a general counsel. We
Right.
have to accept that. And actually what you need are legal tech providers that have software that is built for you. Because as a general counsel, I've seen so many where, they don't want to be talking the same, talk as a law firm. They're talking to their business.
Yes.
So it's different. So for them, they're more looking at what I call kind of a legal front door, say. Again, a case management system, they're like, what? How's that going to help me?
You don't need that.
But actually, if you start talking in, a language they understand, they want, a legal front door. And the reason I think that's so effective is because what does a general counsel do, or a legal team that's in-house? They interact with the business. They're not just lawyers. They wear many hats. They're making sure that the business can function on a day-to-day. They're dealing with C-suite. They're dealing with the board. They're dealing with different teams, HR, procurement, sales. So for them, kind of the legal front door, is a great way to start because it opens that up, and that can transform into kind of matter management, so that their legal workflow, how they interact with the rest of their team. Again, none of this spreadsheet trying to work out who's doing what. Email, we get emails just all day, every day now.
Yeah.
If you're tracking your to-do list on that, you're already kind of at a disadvantage. So for in-house teams, there's some great software that they can use. Now, when it comes to CLM, as I call it, contract lifecycle management, it's not even just about intake and the legal workflow. It's then about insight. And again, I say about legal tech all the time. It's data and insights. And as a general counsel, what is it you want? You want insights so you can report to the board. So if you're using a system that's managing your workflow, how you interact with your team, you get data. You can download nice graphs that you can show to the board, because they don't really want to know, the ins and outs of, what you're talking about with your counsel. And so if we look at that, we're transforming the workflow and the triage, if you like, of legal tasks. But then we're also transforming maybe the contract management side. So as a legal team, we're managing risk, because at any one point, the legal team can be like, okay, well, what's expiring? Something happens. You look at LIBOR came in and everyone was having to, repaper because the rates were changing. COVID happened. Everyone was looking at force majeure, this is a real issue and a problem. And everyone was scrambling because they didn't know the contracts that were going to potentially impact them negatively. So again, a contract management system, you can handle these, kind of, what do I call them, impacts and scenarios that happen, globally. And it's giving you the data to actually mitigate against risk for that, whereby you can do it without it taking 5 months, because by then it's too late. And then you can also, you can interact with your stakeholders, your suppliers in a much better way. As a legal team, you can decide, okay, well, I can start to look at, how can I kind of rework the way that we speak with suppliers? Well, for one, I need to know what we're doing. Who do we have? What are our positions with these contracts? So for that, I think it's again a big positive. And we're not even really talking about AI to some extent here, right?
Yeah.
So, we've got the practice management systems on the law firm side, and then on the corporate side, we've got that kind of legal front door. And we've got companies like LawView that do that really well. There are companies like Link Squares, amongst others. And really, I think what these companies do is they help the legal team. They're for lawyers in-house.
Yeah.
And again, that's where I think they can see really great kind of, efficiencies within their legal team. And then you can actually bring in AI into that. So LawView, for example, has, the whole kind of legal front door CLM. But then what they have is the AI tool where you can actually say, okay, well, actually now let's look at third-party review. Let's build a playbook. Let's build a playbook with our positioning. And let's look at, okay, how can I ingest a contract? And how can I negotiate without having to review it and spend 5 million hours? And again, because they're using this contract repository, all of their data is there.
Yeah.
They haven't got to go anywhere else. So again, you need to look at things of how can we don't necessarily have to solve everything now. Rome wasn't built in a day, but we can start to bring in technology that does pieces of it. Now, some people might already have a CLM tool. Maybe they're using Daily Trust or another firm, because they've already got it for their board management. Again, there are so many different ways that a lawyer can manage what they're doing. Daily Trust, for example, are looking at governance and stakeholder reporting, and how do we manage entities from a governance aspect. But again, if you're using them for a CLM tool, you still want to leverage other things like third-party contract review or other use cases. So then you've got the beauty of there are other tools that you can go out and look for. So maybe you don't want to look at a LawView because you've already got that covered. You can then go out and look at a Robin AI who are, focused on analyzing contracts, a legal AI assistant, being able to kind of have I call it like a pocket paralegal, and be able to talk to a system like you do Google and say, how, I'm drafting a contract for client X, what did we do in the last 3 iterations. And then, but maybe actually that's not what you want. And, maybe you don't need to build reports. So then you might go and say, okay, well, maybe a legal on is better for me because they're not only leveraging our data as a client, i.e., I want to leverage the data that we have within our contracts. I also want to leverage what's best practice with the law. I want to know, okay, well, this clause is good for me creating a, real estate contract. But what about, if we look at the laws in the UAE or the UK, is this the best suggestion? So you want an AI tool that can be like, this is your position as your company, but also you should take this into account. And this is for me where AI gets really, really interesting because as a lawyer, your whole method of, creating contracts, reviewing contracts, the day-to-day of your life has just become easier.
Yeah. With all this in mind, I one of the terms that come to mind is one of this also new terms that come, which is legal ops, which is legal operations. I'm now thinking where a traditional law firm or a traditional legal department in one of the corporates, they're not used to all of these new technologies, and now they want to embrace the technology and go into all of this, but they're afraid that they will interrupt their operations. So they want to take a little bit of an advice. How can we get an advice on the legal operations based on the new technologies, and what is the connection between the legal ops and the legal tech at the moment?
So legal ops, I think, is a necessity actually. And I think the problem that we see here is that law firms are they're well kind of versed on this, right? They have innovation teams, knowledge management, they all kind of work fairly differently, but they're all, they're generally people that have the legal background. So they're lawyers by nature. So they understand what lawyers are trying to do. But what they're actually doing is focusing fully on that, right? Because if you're a partner in a law firm, you don't really have time to be doing this. And that's what happened years ago. They would just be given an extra hat. And of course, if you've got a client and you're working on a litigation case or an M&A case, you can't prioritize that. You've got the GC or the CEO of ADNOC ringing you up. You're not going to say, oh, hang on a minute, I need to speak to the team because we've got a legal tech initiative. They're going to they're going to run to another law firm. So that's what we saw the challenge. But now that people are creating teams to do this is where we're actually now able to actually build functions. So law firms have been doing this for quite some time, but the in-house teams, obviously, not because they're, not because of their any work, it's not because law firms are better. It's just because the law firm model has needed it quicker. So for the in-house teams now, they're now kind of thinking, we need this now. Everything's transforming and we need to get on. And I think the problem now is, how do we do that? Like you said, legal ops, what is it? It's such a new word to some extent.
Yeah.
And you also need to have someone that's got a legal background, that's a techie, that understands processes. Like, this is hard. Like, this isn't easy. There aren't a whole host of people that do it. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I actually had a conversation with a friend the other day, and she was like, I understand what you do now. I've been friends with you since we were like 3 years old. And it's only because everyone now is talking about AI and legal tech. For years, I think even my friends are like, what does she actually do? She says she works with lawyers, but she's not a lawyer. And I think this is where we're moving to. So for legal ops, I think, you need consultants, you need to kind of look at, again, someone that can come in and understand your processes. And you need to put someone in charge of that. It can be their job. And the interesting thing here with the legal in-house community is that my Knowledge Nexus hat, the company that I run, is all around that kind of legal training, empowering lawyers to be able to kind of, do their jobs effectively, without, in an industry where we're just doing too much and we don't have time. And one of the things I think that's going to really help that is the DLAD team, the Dubai Legal Affairs Department, are constantly looking at ways they can support the industry that they regulate. And they are actually about to roll out a legal ops qualification. So, I think, again, it proves that the industry knows that there's a need. So we're hoping that that's going to come out around April time. And that has been created in conjunction with GLS, Global Legal Solutions, who are experts in this. So they have a global consultancy business and they help companies set this up. They go in and kind of create entire, teams and processes and networks. So they've built a 50-hour, I think, qualification course. And again, it's not to say to lawyers, oh, it's another training. It's actually built to help you. If you're a general counsel and you're going to hire a head of legal ops because you know you need to, what does that role even look like? How are you even going to post a job advert? Because most people don't know, right? How do you benchmark it for pay? How do you look for the right people? So this qualification, I think, or I know, is going to help that. And this is what the industry needs. And we need to look at, okay, how can we empower? Then from a legal operations role, I always think that you're so important, actually, as a team, because you are the ones that are going to connect the lawyers to the business, to IT, to stakeholders. You're going to be kind of the backbone of legal tech in a way, which is going to be the thing that makes the company run more efficiently. And, you're going to need to be more than a lawyer, more than an IT person, more than a business analyst. And that's where I think it's going to be really important to build teams that bring in all the different levels of experience and then work together. And the biggest thing I think that people need to do, and this is where legal tech has failed, I've spoken to many GCs. I actually had one come up to me at the Legal 500 conference last week after he listened to my panel on, AI and how it's changing things, is, people have implemented tech that's not worked. And it's just not quite fit the bill. They thought it was going to be great. And I think my biggest piece of advice to any lawyer is you need to look at what you need first. The tech is great, but if it doesn't, we're almost going at it from the wrong angle. We need to come at it we need to look at people, processes, implement, what are our requirements? Like we need to map what we need. Now, the problem is we don't know what we need.
This is very important because a lot of the smaller boutique firms, for them, this is a huge expense when I take a consultant to rerun all my operations. And I don't know if this consultant also understands boutique firms, because boutique firms don't work the same way as the big firms where they have 50 lawyers or 50 partners in it, or even work like GCs. So as new as it is, small boutique firms like me, for example, we don't understand what are you going to change in our operations. I understand very well because I'm working on it for a while right now, but many people in the market, they don't feel like they need it. They have their own processes. A lot of it is manual. A lot of it is used in a hybrid model between manual and tech. Is there enough consultants in the market who can advise on smaller companies? Because the bigger companies, I understand that all the big consultants are able to help them.
Yeah. And this is the thing, right? No, not everyone wants to go, there are obviously the big names, the big four that are brilliant, but not everyone has the budget
Right.
for the big four. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I think there are, yes. And also I think sometimes the legal tech consult kind of partners themselves are evolving. And actually you can, they have kind of people within their teams that can help. And this is, I think, the other thing. We all think of technology, these big enterprise, CLM back in the day was kind of your SAP and your Ariba and your procurement, millions of dollars, technology. I think tech has evolved now with the AI that you don't need that necessarily. And if you're a boutique firm that, is smaller than a, international magic circle, you can probably benefit just as much as a Clifford Chance or a White & Case. And there are technologies out there now that can help there. I mean, I worked with a company out here called Nexoma, and Leroy, their managing partner, came to us and I had a conversation and they were like, we know that we need to kind of look at what we can do, but we just don't know where to start. And I had this conversation and he said it was like a kind of aha moment of, we can actually like leverage this. And I worked with them actually, and they leveraged some technology, actually Henchman, which was now owned by LexisNexis AI. And because when I spoke to them, I really understood their needs. I was like, okay, well, they're project finance lawyers. They're working on lots of big construction projects. No surprises there, being in Dubai. And they were like, we just don't, we need to leverage some level of kind of contract review, but we don't need, we're not at the same level of, we have a couple of lawyers, and this is, I think, the other thing. There are technologies that you can use. There are tools that you can look at that are available for a couple of a license, where you can just have a couple of users. So for a smaller, I don't like the word small because you're still often dealing with big clients and big projects.
Yeah.
But for a boutique law firm, there are companies out there like Clio, for example. They're actually coming out here in a couple of weeks, and I'm on a panel with them, and they're trying to transform the way that the boutique law firms and the mid-market work, because they're like, you can use case management tools. So again, as a smaller law firm, automate the intake of what's happening, automate, the way that your billing works, automate the stuff that's just headache and admin, so that you can actually work and focus on the important stuff. And again, you can do that because it can be embedded. And also the other thing I think I haven't touched upon is make sure that you use technologies that interact with the technologies you're using. Microsoft, are you a Microsoft user? Are you using Salesforce? Are you using Google? Are you using Teams? Like, you need technologies that interact with this, because we're all on our phones, we're all on email. And the last thing you want is something that doesn't, kind of talk to
each other.
if I'm a lawyer and I'm using technology, I want to be able to go my email to sync, and again, if we look at review tools, I'm used to getting an email and a Word document, and I then want to use the tool in Word. I don't want to have to log into 5 different things. And that's where AI is really enhanced now, because we can look at technologies both for law firms and in-house teams, where we can leverage things that work in the apps that we're used to, and that can, you can actually, you don't have to change the way you're working. For an in-house team, your sales team can continue to use Salesforce, but, the technology is embedded in it so that the sales team are happy because they don't want to change, but the GC and the legal team are happy because they've got their kind of oversight and, the workflow that they need from a legal perspective of governance and, running those contracts. And the argument has always been, well, who takes precedent? The legal team, ultimately is really important, but also as a sales team, because they're the one that are signing the deals that bring the money in. And this is where legal tech, I actually think the biggest value for teams is that it's going to bridge the gap between the business. So the legal team are not going to be seen as a blocker, or what do you do all day? Or what, I've chased you 5 million times for that contract and you still haven't got back to me, because they don't really understand what you do. So it's going to help, that relationship. Legal tech now, it allows a lawyer to talk the language of a business, because you get analysis that you can actually give to a CFO because he says to a lawyer, or the GC, why are we going to give you budget for this? This is the biggest problem with legal tech as well, right?
Yeah.
Why am I going to give you budget for this? And the lawyer can't go back and say, oh, because it's going to make us more efficient, because then he's going to say, okay, so does that mean I can cut your headcount? So really what we need to do is we need to get the CFO or the board to understand how it's going to help them. It's going to potentially reduce risk. That's in their interest. It's going to reduce the contract signing time, so that when we're looking at these big, $1 billion deals, we're not then stuck in this negotiation phase for months, because that's what they care about.
Yes.
So again, we have to talk the language of the business. If you look at the law firms, again, it's the partnership of a law firm and a corporate is changing. I mean, you yourself delved into this the other week, and again, I think we have to look at how it's helping in a positive way. And when we look at technology, again, it always goes back to the people. It goes back to relationship. It goes back to community and network, and that's what it's going to free us up for.
Yeah, and I think one of the significant changes that the technology has been has been very instrumental as well was the education and the continuous training, and how easy it become, and how accessible these training courses are. And I think just because of technology, I can get my training and my continuous learning, or my updated courses on the legal, not just legal and everything, but the use of technology have made it very, very easy to take a course run by anybody anywhere in the world about a topic that I'm interested in, and get qualified, even get certified for a specific area of practice through technology. And this helps a lot. And I know very well that through Knowledge Nexus, you have been active on that. So talk to me a little bit about Knowledge Nexus.
Yeah, so Knowledge Nexus has been exciting, actually. It's been kind of a long thought process. And I guess the most interesting part of it is, yes, the backbone of it is training. It's an LMS. I mean, education is the backbone. But actually, I like to think of it as kind of education, community, people, because as lawyers, we need access to this, right? And like you said, it's not just the law. Lawyers all went to law school. They all know the law. But actually, being a good lawyer these days is not just about the law. It's about being able to do business. It's about it's being able to run, a team. It's about being able to win clients. It's about being able to talk to the CEO, having difficult conversations, being able to sell something to get, your board to agree to it. And so I think that's something that we lack sometimes because, yes, we've got all of the, the learning side. And actually, if you look at online learning, it's really important, but also is in person. But I think when you look at the online learning, like the CLPD program, one of the things that I worked with the DLAD, the Dubai Legal Affairs Department, on was they did a survey actually to lawyers. And one of the biggest things that came back was, we need more. We want a better way of consuming training. We want a better way of, managing the regulation. Every lawyer that has a practicing license has to get, 8 points from DLAD and 8 points, from the non-mandatory. And every lawyer I speak to says, like every year I'm like, how many have I done? What have I done? Have I got to get more? Quick, sign me up to these events and these, training. And that's not really what we want, because then technically they're not doing training for what its purpose is, right? It would be much better to kind of have an evolution of each year where they kind of process and they get training on what they want and what they need.
Well, one of my big pains when I was taking these courses was to drive all the way down to Al Hudayba building, which was like in the middle of, there, and it was timed and it was hard to find a parking, and it was, honestly, I was not making choices based on what I want to hear. I was making choices based on, let's get this done. With, and that's all, honestly.
And when can I fit it in my calendar, right?
Yep.
Whereas really, imagine having courses where, you still have a course, right? But like you have it in digestible, engageable. Let's also think about, do we really want to be sat looking through these long PowerPoints? What we want is what we're used to on our phone. Like we're used to kind of we engage in a different way. So we engage better when we're not just seeing a flat screen of text, right? We engage when we can scroll, when things change visually, we're visual people. So if we can kind of, if we can take in training in that way, it's actually more kind of, it's more enjoyable. I mean, I'm as enjoyable as training can be.
I mean, we all changed the way we consume knowledge now, have been changed a lot since many years. And I think education system itself and patterns have changed.
And education, I think, is outdated, right? Which is a whole nother topic.
I agree.
But if we can give lawyers training in a way that's useful for them, that's digestible, it's something that becomes less of a burden. And I've got to do, I've got 4 more points to get, whatever. And that means having a system where, again, our minds kept, there's science behind this, right? There's science behind where we zone out and we just click, click, click. But if we have something where we're active and we can look at videos, our kind of, system has the ability to change the way that we build training, so we can look at it as, yes, we've got text and we've got pictures and we can scroll and, keep the mind ticking over, because that's how the human brain works. But then have a video, that person that would have been leading the in-person training, have them kind of, facilitating, because again, that's going to kind of keep us more engaged. But then at the end of it, like you said, you want it, you need to have that kind of mandatory compliance, angle covered. So that's where we built the program to kind of match the CLPD program, so that lawyers can access training, no hassle, but also it tracks the CLPD. So at the end of the year, you can constantly look at your file and be like, okay, I'm done. I'm done. That's what we want, right? We want lawyers to want to learn, to want to take in knowledge about the things that they're passionate about. Maybe they want to know more about ESG because they want to learn about, how they can bring that into their practice. They want to learn more about soft skills. Like you and I have had this discussion a few times. It's something that I'm super passionate about, because it's not just about the law. It's about, soft skills. And if we as lawyers are looking at the next generation, which is the other side of this, right? You've got, thousands of law students that are studying right now here in Dubai, and they are the future, the future legal leaders, if you like. They're going to be the ones that are going to come and work in your firm. Like, you're going to be hiring these people, and you want good talent. You want the best of the best. So as a profession, we need to give back to these lawyers, because the education system, to be frank, is not doing them, justice to some extent. Because yes, they're brilliantly trained. They understand the law. I work with interns, I mentor some law students in Middlesex, and they're brilliant. They look at things and, they pick out things even quicker than I am, and they've not even started practicing yet.
Yeah.
But what they want is they want to know how to navigate life. They want to know how do I deal with the stress of leaving the classroom and coming into the world? How am I going to get through an interview? How do I have a difficult conversation? How do I kind of project confidence without being kind of, offensive, or things like this? And, to be a good lawyer is that, to some extent.
Is way beyond what you learn from art school.
Yes. And this is where I think the education sector can go, right? And lawyers want this as well, I think. I think there's an element of we never stop learning, right? Like, I learn, I'm learning every day, as we all are. But I think if we can build something that kind of gives this back. And one thing that I'm doing as Knowledge Nexus is I really want to be seen as kind of the backbone of the legal community, whereby people think of us as they're helping us with training, kind of, and connecting us with what we need. I ran an event last week at the DIFC Academy, and around 50 lawyers turned up. ESG is a subject that, some I think don't, is a scary to some extent, but actually what lawyers wanted was practical advice. They wanted to learn about, what does this actually mean for me in the day-to-day work? Like, what does this mean when I'm reviewing contracts, hiring? Yes, okay, we know that there's climate change and that there's, a social element to this, but what does it mean? So I think we need to switch from just a textbook shoving information at people and actually have a discussion, have kind of engagement. And what that session proved to me was that people do want to learn about this. People do want to know what it means. And as Knowledge Nexus, I want to kind of give people this. And with that, it means working with everyone. It means working with the general counsels, with the in-house legal teams, with the law firms, because you all work together. As a law firm, you're working with the corporates. As the corporates, they need you. There's the consultants. They're also needed for the kind of niche experts spaces and things like that. And so again, I think what better place to bring all of that together, whereby you can come in and get online learning if you need it, and CLPD points, because it's just part of the day job, but also come in and, find events, find roundtables, find panels. Like, I run GC events constantly. I did one with FTI a couple of weeks ago and had about 11 GCs in the room. And Kate Brader, the head of risk, came over from the UK, and she was brilliant. She talked about a kind of crisis scenario. As a lawyer, you get pulled in the room because, a video gets leaked of the CEO, and it's not quite what it should be. And everyone's panicking, marketing, like comms are kind of like, what do we do? And how do you manage that? You've got the CEO who's a very, he's a stakeholder. And that's what lawyers want, right? They want to learn how to kind of navigate these, because yes, they know the law and they're looking at, okay, well, what do we have to do? What's our kind of, regulatory standpoint, but also how do we enable the business to handle this? And so people want to be in groups to engage and learn, and we were in a group, and the GC of CAFU brought up an example of, something that had happened where, they were seeing kind of photoshopped evidence of something that, they had to deal with. And, other people were talking about whistleblowing and, information being leaked to the press about particular deals. This all gives legal a headache.
I totally agree with you. And having a community of lawyers around you and being in this, any kind of legal society in general is very important. And it's something that empowers you and helps you a lot, gives you a lot of ideas, and you get a lot of advice. I remember yesterday, I had a phone call with one very young lawyer, a smart one, because he did something wrong and he did some mistake, and he was so afraid, so stressed. How is he going to handle the situation with the client? How is he going to handle the situation with the managing partner? But because he's within our society as Emirates Legal Network, he came to me and said, "Hey, I know you are a CSP in ADGM. I know you're a lawyer. I know you're doing this and that, and you're working with Emirates Legal Network. I need your opinion." And this access to me, I gave him advice on what to do, to own up to the mistake, how to fix it, showing up to the client, showing up to the managing partner, and this kind of advice help him. And he came to me last night and gave me a feedback. It's like, "Thank you very much. Our call worked. Everything is settled. Everything is nice now," and it gave me an assurance is that I sometimes make this call to others as well, so I really helped that guy.
We're all human, right?
Yes. And I had other similar problems, is that I made this call as well. And I think being part of the society is very, very important. I want to ask you one last question that should be, what should be your advice or a tip for anybody who want to embrace technology and take part of the legal tech evolution or the technology revolution that is happening with AI right now? Where do they start?
So I think the first thing is to not be scared of it. I think we have to, it's not going anywhere. It's clear that it's there, right? And we have to understand that it's there to help us. So I think of it as like, getting in your car and it's taking you from A to B. The biggest misconception of legal tech is that it's a magic red button. The amount of lawyers I speak to, they're like, this was meant to do this and it doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, well, why doesn't it work? Like, tell me. I'm listening. And I'm like, okay, so let's take it a step back. If you were talking to your paralegal associate, what information would you give them? And they're like, okay, this. And I'm like, so why is the machine going to be any different? Why are you expecting the AI to read your mind? You need to give it information. Like it's like anything in life, right? You get out what you put in. And technology is no different. So again, I think the really important thing is that we still remember to learn. And actually, quickly, to touch upon the newer generation and the students, like we have to give back, right? We have to empower them to do better. I mean, the example you said, like how great that person felt like he could, reach out rather than sit there and just stew and panic. That's a credit to you, that he felt like he could reach out. And that to me is community. That's what we should all be. And like that, out of everything you've done in your career, that's probably something that actually gives you that kind of feeling of purpose, right?
Yeah.
Like, and for students, I think we need to remember that legal tech doesn't mean that we have to stop thinking. So we need to learn with it, and we still need to be switched on. Like think about ChatGPT, right? We can get it to answer anything, but it doesn't mean we have to stop questioning it. Why? Can you give me references? Can you look at why like what's the background of that? Because then as a lawyer, we can be like, okay, I understand why it gave me that answer. I didn't spend 20 hours writing that memo, but I kind of understand how it was put together. So for junior lawyers, they have to kind of remember that they still need to think and not use it. And for us kind of seasoned professions, we also need to. But again, I think my biggest piece of advice would be, embrace it. Look back at what you want to achieve. So don't try and fix everything. Try and look at, okay, well, would my daily life be better if I fixed this one portion? If I didn't have to spend hours updating an Excel spreadsheet. I was talking to a client recently and they were managing their IP portfolio on a spreadsheet. There are technologies out there. I've just been working with 2 in-house teams with a firm called Right Hub, and they transform the way that a legal team or a law firm, because they have 2 different products, that can manage that. So again, that lawyer now doesn't have to update a spreadsheet of their thousands of trademarks and run the risk of not re-registering or renewing a trademark, because that means that someone else could come in and, take it. There's really ramifications. Or they miss an infringement because they didn't realize that some firm in Italy was ripping off their logo. I was talking to the GC of Almarai once, and he was like, they have a real problem of their logo being used in petrol stations, companies trying to sell their products. That as a legal team is an issue, and they're not knowing that. So we need to figure out, again, like look at something that you want to fix that you're spending too much time on daily. and then speak to someone about that, you know, and find technology. So don't just go out there being like, I want technology, I want legal tech. Be like, I want to fix this thing. I want to spend less time data entry. I want to spend less time updating that spreadsheet. I want to spend less time looking at a document. I want to spend less time creating an M&A due diligence report for my client. Then we can start to look at, okay, well, now I can look at something that's specific for that for you. I can find you something that, yes, maybe it does a lot of other things as well, but we can fit it to that. A, it's going to help you better. B, when you go to your stakeholders to get budget for it, it's going to be, well, I hate the word easy because it's not, you know, and I think if we look at this, we start to kind of break it down and then we can evolve with it and we can look at kind of what I call, you know, bolting on different things.
Well, thank you so much for all the knowledge and all the information that you're giving us and all the very valuable advices. It was really knowledgeable education from you to us. Thank you so much, Sophie.
Thank you.
Well, my last take about this, my friends, legal tech. Don't just jump into it. AI, legal AI solutions. Don't just jump there. First of all, understand it, educate yourself, invest in the knowledge, but invest first in yourself so that you understand what do you need it for and how can you use it. Because with these two elements, you're going to be able to enhance your career, enhance your productivity, enhance your work, and you'll be able to understand what is legal tech and use it in the best way. Don't just jump into any solution out there. Ask yourself, what is the problem? How can I fix it? What are the tools in the market that help me fix it? Do I know how to use it? Invest in yourself, educate yourself, understand it, and then legal tech will work for you and will be the best use case for legal tech, for legal AI, for technology, for knowledge management, for legal ops, for all these lovely, amazing expressions or new terminologies coming up in the market. Thank you very much for being with us. And this is your dose for Monday Legal. See you next week.